Hi, I'm Bart Herbison, Executive Director of the Nashville Songwriters Association. And this week for the Tennessean, a very special story behind the song with, words fail me, the Paul Williams.
Oh, your buddy Paul Williams.
Welcome, Paul. But you've just been so important to the history of American music, its very fabric and its very culture, as a composer, a songwriter, and now as an advocate for creative rights as the chairman of ASCAP. And thank you for all you've meant to all of us.
Greatest honor I've ever been given is to stand up and say that the kids that are starting out making music today deserve to make a viable living with their hard creative work.
One of the most recognizable songs on the planet. I had a friend a few years back go to Hungary, and nobody spoke a word of English where he was, and they were singing two American songs, Que Sera Sera and The Rainbow Connection.
Oh, I love that. Wow, exactly.
So it's been almost 35 years. Do you remember the day you wrote it?
Oh, I remember the day I
Let's
wrote
tell
it.
it how it got born.
Well, it began. The song was part of the score for the Muppet movie, and I had been to England to do the Muppet show for Jim Henson, and it was a really nice relationship from the very beginning. I was joking about the fact that because I'm short, it'd be great to be working with these little tiny Muppets, these little felt creatures, and all of a sudden these huge Muppets come out that are like 8 feet tall, and we had a good time. Jim asked me if I would write the songs for an HBO special called Emmett Otter's Jugband Christmas, which I wrote the songs for by myself. And then I got the pearl. I got the big job. He said, "Would you write the songs for the Muppet movie?" The Muppets were going to do a feature about how the Muppets got together, and he asked if I would write the songs. I had a moment of brilliance, and I said yes, but I should not do it alone. Let me bring Kenny Asher in, who's a brilliant composer.
Right.
Kenny and I had written most of the songs for A Star Is Born together, and Kenny and I sat down in my living room with Jim Henson, with Jerry Jewell, the screenwriter, Frank Oz, the great Muppeteer actor, director, and talked about this movie and where the songs were going to go. And of course, the first song in the movie is an I Am song. It's the song where we discovered Kermit, and he's sitting in the swamp. And what do you have? You have light, you have water, you have the elements of refraction, you have rainbows. So we decided to write a song that would involve some of those elements. Our model was that amazing moment in Pinocchio when Jiminy Cricket in the nighttime takes off his top hat, climbs up into the window, looks at the heavens and sings, "When you wish upon a star, makes no difference who you are." Oh my God, it's like it opens up your heart, and there's this spiritual awareness, and that's what we wanted to write for Kermit. Long answer to a great question.
Well, writing for projects, you're one. There's not all the songwriters are composers in the sense that they write for projects. You've done both. Songs come to you, and you write them inspirationally that way. And when you write for projects, you've always been amazing, but it can turn out either way. Did you and Kenny know that day what you had?
We had such immense respect for Jim Henson's brilliant spirit. I just wrote a blog of a website called gratitudeandtrust.com. And I just wrote a blog called The Elegance of Kindness. And The Elegance of Kindness is about Jim Henson and what it was like to work for Jim. I'll tell you a quick story about working with Jim from that day when we met to talk about the Muppet movie. We talked about where the songs were going to go, what they'd be about. It was just very loosely sketched out. And we walked back to Jim's car. And while we're walking back, I said, Kenny and I won't surprise you with this stuff. We're not gonna ambush you. We'll let you hear the songs along the way while we're working on them. And Jim said, and it was classic Jim Henson. He said, "Oh no, that's all right. I'm sure they'll be wonderful. I'll hear them in the studio." That's there's a level of trust in that is so immense. The Muppets were making their very first feature, and there's so much writing on the success of this. It says something about what he thought of Kenny Asher and I, but it says more about what he thought of his own choices, that he trusted his heart. He trusted that he'd chosen the right people to do this. He gave us permission to write whatever we felt, and we gave him the Rainbow Connection.
But did you know that day is so infectious? I mean, I remember the first time I ever heard it. You just songs that do this to you.
Dun, 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 dun. There is an energy to that. Dun, 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 dun. I knew that we had a chance to write something, and what we essentially did is we wrote ourselves into a terrible corner. Why are there so many songs about rainbows, and what's on the other side? Rainbows are visions, only illusions. Rainbows have nothing to hide. I went, oh, that's brilliant. Now we've written ourselves into a corner here where we've denied any magic in rainbows. But then we turned it around. So we've been told, and some choose to believe it. I know they're wrong. Wait and see. Someday we'll find it. Someday we'll find it. In other words, Kermit doesn't have the answers. The heart of the song, Bart, to me, is in the lines, who said that every wish would be heard and answered if wished on the morning star. Somebody thought of that, and someone believed it. Look what it's done so far. I think that in that line is the essence of what is my philosophy, and I hope it was accurate for Kermit, is that there is just immense power in faith, that there's more beauty in the questions than there are in the answers. Someday we'll find it. So, who said that every wish would be heard and answered if wished on a morning star? Somebody thought of that, and someone believed it. Look what it's done so far. It says that if you have a creative thought, and you have somebody to believe in what you're doing, and you have the element of faith involved, that we can do anything. It also says something about the process of writing songs. Because, it says, Nashville Songwriters Association International, it all begins with a song. It all begins with a songwriter. I would go one step above that. It all begins with some amazing creative source.
It does.
That we're just, fortunate enough to tap into.
Do you remember the first time you heard Kermit do it?
No,
How you felt?
well, I produced the album, so I went into the studio with Jim, and Jim started to sing it, and it wasn't working. And it was like there was something that was just a little off. And I said to Jim, why don't you get Kermit? And he said, okay. And he went and he got Kermit, and we put up a little thing so he could put Kermit up, and Kermit sang.
Another level of trust, though, man.
Well, you know what? When there's something, you're standing in a conversation with Jim Henson and Frank Oz. There are three of you there, but if Frank has Miss Piggy with him, and Jim Henson has Kermit, there are five of you in the conversation. Yeah. And I didn't need Jim Henson; I needed Kermit. And when he picked up Kermit, I've always said I've got felt in my DNA. I felt the change. And when he sang, "Why are there so many?" The song is written in Kermit speak.
It is.
Well, somebody pointed out to me, Richard Carpenter said, why didn't you go, why da da dee, ba da da dee? I said, well, because Kermit doesn't talk like that. Why are there so many songs about rain? So we wrote it in Kermit speak. And Jim Henson delivered a performance, Kermit delivered a performance that has survived, and for me to, at this point, I've done duets with Jason Mraz and Willie Nelson and Sarah McLachlan, Me First and the Gimme Gimmes, all the Dixie Chicks. These wonderful, wonderful acts have recorded the song. It's a tribute to the song. Yeah,
Kermit did it with Debbie Harry.
Did it with Debbie Harry, but I think that every time it's done, it's a bit of a tribute to Jim Henson and what he delivered to people. He never wrote. He said, "There are no writing. We're not writing for children. We're writing for the child in all of us." And so I think whenever the song is performed, and if people love it, I think what they're recognizing is some of Jim Henson's pure spirit.
Could even you have imagined the profound reach and magnitude in the lives it's touched?
Oh, I don't know that I do it at this point. I think that requires claiming authorship, and I'm not sure that I, at this point in my life, there's a point probably 25, 30 years ago when I'd have gone, I was hoping that it would have, but the fact is, the longer I'm alive, the little less I have to do with the song, in a lot of ways.
And you've written a special, I guess, liner notes for the upcoming anniversary, 35 years.
The nearly 35th anniversary. Oh, that's so Muppety. Not a 35th anniversary edition, but it's a nearly 35th anniversary edition of. They released a Blu-ray of the Blu-ray version of the Muppet movie, and they re-released the soundtrack, which I produced with Jim Henson and wrote with Kenny Asher. And they asked me to write the liner notes, and in the liner notes, I tell that story about Jim saying, "Okay, we'll hear it in the studio." It's a tribute to Jim, and it's a tribute to the fans. The reason that the Muppets are such monstrously successful bits of felt as they are today is also because of the fans who've stuck to the Muppets and stuck with them. And I live in gratitude and trust. I'm so grateful for the life I've been given through my songwriting. I'm especially grateful to NSAI, and you know why, but I can tell the rest of the world that as I was maybe 7 years sober, I'm 23 years sober now, I was about 7 years sober, felt totally disconnected to the music world, and was working around recovery and the like, and was asked by NSAI to come to Nashville and be a part of a celebration called Tin Pan South, where I was honored as a quote unquote iconic songwriter. And there's something in the water in Nashville, and more importantly, there is something in the way you treated me, the way that the people in Nashville treated me, and the way that the songwriting community through NSAI treated me, that all of a sudden I wanted to write a song again. I wanted to do this again, the fact that I wound up on the board of directors at ASCAP and wound up as president and just reelected for a third time. Some of the headwaters of that have to come back to NSAI.
When you talk about falling off a bike, at that trip, you wrote a song that was #1 later that year for Diamond Rio. So
John Vesner and I sat down and talked about how we both turned our lives around due to the fact that some young lady said, "I'm out of here because I can't be around to watch you die." And we wrote, "The good news is I'm better for the time we spent together. The bad news is you're gone," for Diamond Rio.
great song. This week, the story behind the song for the Tennessean from a national treasure, Mr. Paul Williams in the Rainbow Connection.